recently updated. I think everyone should have received that, the updated agenda. Yes, no?
It was just probably half an hour ago. There's just a new motion on here, so but we can get to that. It's motion 12 with regards to approving the allocation of the surplus to the reserves. So we can talk about that when we get there.
Okay. So is there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Would you like to add anything to the agenda? Hearing none. Could I have a motion that the agenda for May 7th, 2020 regular meeting of the Pelham Finance and Audit Committee be adopted? Could I have a motion to move that, please?
Motion.
Michael, seconder, Bill. Teresa.
Sorry, the agenda that's been published right now does not have 7.3, which has been an amendment, and 7.3 is the appointment of the auditors. So we have to amend the agenda that's been published.
Okay. So
that's the amended.
So 7.3 has to be added for the appointment of the auditors. Could I have a mover on that, please? Sorry, Trevor, you can't. Michael, seconder, Bill, all in favor?
Aye.
Carried. So now can we approve the agenda? Let's see. So we did have a mover by Michael, a seconder by Bill. So can we all in favor of the agenda as amended? Yeah. Okay, perfect. All right. So declaration of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Anyone to declare? Seeing none. Approval of minutes. So the last time we met was March 5th, 2020. Draft and revised terms of reference of the Pelham Audit and Finance Committee be approved. Any discussion with respect to those minutes? Seeing none, could I have someone move that we accept the minutes?
John, can we just have a correction on my last name in the minutes, if that's okay?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just missing an M.
Oh, apologize for that.
No worries. It's small. It's nothing major, though.
Everywhere he seconded.
Yeah.
Or moved.
Yeah, but meanwhile, under the presence, your name is correct. Under members of presence. Okay. I should have caught that, Bill, shouldn't I?
Yeah. Oh, it's okay. It happens.
Okay, so with that amendment, could I have a motion to approve? Bill with 2 M's, and Michael. All in favor? Carried. Okay. I don't think we have any business arising from the minutes, do we, Teresa? No. Okay, so new business, 7.1 audit. So Trevor Ferguson of Deloitte, and I guess I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I'm used to, obviously, as we all are, to being on site in the council chambers. So I'm assuming that everybody has a copy of the package in front of them. Okay. So I've got 7.1 in front of me. This is our report to the audit committee on the results of the 2019 audit. Before I get started, just wanted to say 2 things. Number 1, our condolences to everyone on the passing of the councillor. It's very sad news. So our thoughts are with all of you. And the second thing that I would point out is just a big thank you to Teresa and Charlotte and the team. We conducted the audit remotely as required through physical distancing measures, and they were great. super helpful throughout the entire process. The fact that we're here on time, it was a true testament to how well prepared they were and how helpful they were throughout the audit. So my thanks to both of you and our entire team. Thanks you. So I'm going to look like I'm looking over here. I'm not right at the camera, sorry, but that's where I've got the presentation. So I promise I'm paying attention. So I'm just going to skip through a couple of things here. I'm going to go to the title of the page I'm looking at is our Audit Explained. This is on page 17 of 107 in the package that I have. Hopefully that's the same page numbers everybody else has. So title of the page is our Audit Explained. And there's a box in the top left-hand corner called Audit Scope and Terms of Engagement. Does everybody have? Is everybody with me? Okay, yeah, good. So in terms of our audit plan, in terms of engagement, we performed our audit exactly in accordance with the audit plan that we presented. So no changes to that whatsoever. I'll get to the audit risks in just a minute because we'll go into more detail in a few pages. With respect to materiality, obviously we didn't test every transaction that happened at the town over the course of the year, so we did perform our audit with the concept of materiality in mind. We based our materiality on total revenues. Our quantitative materiality worked out to about $700,000, just for reference. So if we found a misstatement that was greater than that, we would consider your financial statements materially misstated. We have a reporting threshold to this committee, which is about 5% of our materiality, and that worked out to about $30,000. So if we identified any misstatement greater than that $30,000 threshold, we'd be telling you about it today as part of this meeting. However, if you flip to the next page, on the top right-hand corner, you'll see that there's a box called misstatements, and you can see that there are none. We did not identify any misstatements. So again, a true testament to Teresa and Charlotte and the team. So thank you very much. And by the way, I should have said this off the top. I noticed that everybody is on mute, but if you do have questions, don't hesitate to ask as we go through. There's no need to wait till the end or anything like that. If there's something that you want clarified or want me to go into more detail. On the bottom right-hand corner of this page, there's a box called Uncorrected Disclosure Misstatements, and again, there are none. So what that means is that in our view, your financial statements disclose everything that they're required to in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. And the last thing we'll point out on this page is just that box in the top left-hand corner called Status and Outstanding Matters. There are a couple of things listed here, but those are only listed there because the financial statements have not been approved by council. So once that happens, we'll be able to take care of all three of those items and complete our audit procedures. So there's nothing that we're waiting for from management at this time. So if we can flip down one more page, I'm looking at a page that's got two boxes on the top half, one called Fraud Risk and one called Independence. So I'll talk about this in a little bit more detail in just a second, and we had a discussion as part of the audit plan as well, but as part of our role as your external auditors, we're required to consider the risk of fraud in our audit of your financial statements. So there's a number of procedures that we performed as we're required to, and needless to say, we did not identify anything unusual. So I'll get into some of those procedures in a little bit more detail in just a minute. With respect to independence, obviously we're required to be independent in order to be able to provide you with an independent auditor's report. So clearly we're in good shape there, and you've got the draft opinion with you that's attached at the front of your financial statements. The last thing I'll touch on this page is just around significant accounting practices, judgments, and estimates. There are a number of estimates that go into the preparation of your financial statements. So there are also a fair number of hard numbers, if you will, that are reasonably straightforward, but a lot of estimates, certainly around some accrued liabilities. When you think about the town's employee future benefit liability, for example, that's a big estimate. There's a lot of, you're estimating discount rates and things like that. In that, you're always estimating around collections of receivables, and there are lots of things that go into your statements that require estimates. Needless to say, we are comfortable with the process that management has for developing the estimates, and we're comfortable with the estimates themselves. So if I could direct you to the next couple of pages, what we've done is we've copied directly out of our audit plan some of the audit risks that we've identified. Now, just by way of touching back on what I mentioned in our audit plan presentation, this is by no means a comprehensive list of our audit risks. This is just some of the risks that we want to bring to your attention. So we've copied down the risks on the left-hand side of the page. The middle column is our audit response, again, directly out of our audit plan. And on the right-hand side, we've added a new column being our audit results. And you can see for all of those points, we've identified them as being no significant issues noted, which is a good thing coming from us. There's a little asterisk on the first page I'm talking about with respect to revenue and deferred revenue amounts. And on the following page, there's one beside management override of controls. That is because Canadian audit standards requires that we presume a risk of fraud in our audit of your financial statements. That is the same for any audit of any financial statements in Canada, regardless of the accounting framework followed, the size of the entity, no matter what. So it is not specific to the town by any means. But what it does mean is that in those particular areas, we do a fair bit more testing than we would if something was a normal risk or something like that for that matter. So with respect to revenue, we do a fair amount of testing, particularly around obviously your taxation revenue, development charges, and any conditional grants. That's where we focus a fair bit of our time as far as revenue testing is concerned. The other one with respect to management override of controls, the theory here is that you could have the best internal control system possible, but if there's an opportunity for management to override that system, then it renders the system useless. So some of the procedures that we perform here are just in relation to try to test whether or not there's an opportunity for management to do that and whether or not perhaps they've done that. So I'm looking at some of the audit response bullet points here on the page. So a couple of things that we do. One is to test a sample of journal entries entered into throughout the course of the year to make sure that the entries are properly prepared, properly approved in the normal course of business, things like that. We have about 144 indicators that we look for as part of when we're testing journal entries. And probably one of the biggest things that we have to do in relation to our journal entry testing is to make sure that we actually got a complete set of all the journal entries. And I can assure you that testing to make sure that whether or not we got a complete set is a lot easier said than done. So needless to say, we're comfortable with what we received from management. The other two things that I'll point out here, one in terms of accounting estimates, we do what we call a look-back test. So we'll take a look at any significant estimates that were made as part of your 2018 financial statements and find out what the outcome of those estimates were. And the theory there is to look at them all and see if there's perhaps a bias for management to be overstating or understating estimates on a regular basis. Again, we did not identify anything unusual as far as that's concerned either. And the last thing that I'll point out here is just discussions that we've had both with management inside and outside the finance department and with this committee. You'll recall that we had a discussion as part of the audit plan process about this, so we don't need to rehash that discussion now. So those are some of the procedures that we performed, and we're comfortable with respect to that risk. If you could flip the page, the title of the next page I'm looking at is Other Reportable Matters. A few things that I'm just going to highlight very briefly on this page. The first is just in terms of significant difficulties encountered in performing the audit. There are none. And I point this out particularly because the audit was conducted remotely. I know I said that off the top, but it is impressive how smoothly the audit went given the remote nature of it. So that's, again, a testament to the team you have in place. The other thing that I'll bring to your attention in terms of post-balance sheet events, there are none that are being disclosed in your financial statements. Obviously, we're all aware of COVID-19 and the financial impacts that it has had to several businesses and organizations. We discussed this with management and agreed that disclosure in your financial statements probably wasn't needed at this time, but it is something that we considered, and I'm sure you'll probably see it in a number of other organizations. So I just bring it to your attention just so you know that it was something that was considered. If we get into the appendices, and I'm going to go pretty quickly here, Appendix 1, these are our communication requirements to you directly out of Canadian audit standards. So over the course of 2 pages, we've listed our 20 communication requirements. And on the right-hand side, we've added a reference column to tell you where we've told you about all of these items. So a number of them are either referenced to places on our master service agreement or audit plan or somewhere in this document. And again, a number of others are noted as being none or none noted, which is always a good thing coming from us. Appendix 2 is just a copy of our independence letter, just stating the fact that we're independent. So that's there for your reading pleasure. In Appendix 3, that is our draft management representation letter. That's what we'll be asking management to sign off on as part of the completion process of the audit. There are no unusual representations in that representation letter. It's very straightforward. So I don't propose to go through it in any detail, but it's there for your information. And the last thing that I'll point out here is just Appendix 4, some resources for the committee. We've put out a significant number of points of view and thoughtware with respect to COVID and the related business impacts. We've got a number of things that are public sector and government oriented as well that are on our website and you all have access to. So if it's something that you're looking for, I'm not trying to do a sales pitch, but if it's something that you want to have a look at, you're more than welcome to do so. So with that, that's it for our report. So I will pause there and simply take any questions that you have or go through anything in more detail.
So Trevor's seeing no one clicking off their microphone. It appears that there's no questions with respect to what you've presented so far.
Okay. Good. Now, Teresa and Charlotte, did you want me to go through the statements or did you guys want to do that? It's up to you. They're your statements, but I can speak to them if you want.
I think we would prefer if you went through them and then we can answer any other questions.
Okay. So I'm scrolling down to your financial statements. The cover page starts on page 33 of 107 of the package. So hopefully everybody's with me. I'm just scrolling into the independent auditors report that starts on page 35. This is what's now considered a standard independent auditors report. You will recall a couple of years ago that it changed. So this is a standard clean opinion. And again, this will be signed once the financial statements are approved by council. At the bottom of page 36 there, it's got a date of May 7th as being the date of our audit report. We're going to amend that because that'll change and be the date that the financial statements are approved by council, not today's date. So if we get into the numbers themselves, so I'm moving on to page 37. So I'm looking at your consolidated statement of financial position. So it's broken out between your financial assets, your liabilities, and at the bottom, the non-financial assets. So if you look at the top half of your financial assets, you'll see you had a significant increase year over year. Last year, you had about 15.3 million, and this year you're at 21.2 million. Large piece of that is relation to the increase in cash and cash equivalents. And if you look down at the middle half of the page, you'll see your liabilities have gone down. Last year, you're about $56.7 million, and you had this year about 54.5. So big decrease in your bank indebtedness, which is always a great thing. Slight increase in your accounts payable and accrued liabilities, and obviously you had the debt issuance as well of $4 million, which partly attributes to that increase in cash and cash equivalents. And at the bottom half of the page, you got your non-financial assets being your capital assets and your prepaid expenses. So overall, if you look at your net debt position, slightly above that non-financial assets territory, that's considered a key figure when one looks at a set of government financial statements. And last year, your net debt was nearly $41.5 million. And that has improved this year rather dramatically. And now you're in a net debt position of about $33.2 million. So that's a big shift. So that's something to be proud of. If you scroll down to your statement of operations, we get into a little bit more of the reasoning for why some of those changes happened. So obviously we've got your revenues, expenses, and annual surplus. Your revenues increased substantially year over year, almost by $6 million. A large portion of those increases are a little bit due to taxation revenue. And a big chunk is the gain on sale of land that was held for sale. So last year you had about $300,000, and this year you have almost $4 million. So that's a big chunk of where that increase came from. But you can also see when you go down to your expenses, last year you had total expenses of 24.5 roughly $1 million, and this year you're down a couple $100,000 in total expenses. So again, you've generated a whole lot more revenue while incurring fewer expenses, which is always a good thing. With all this resulting in your annual surplus of just under $6.1 million compared to about $100,000 last year. So that's a very big shift. If you flip the page down to your consolidated statement of change in net debt, this is really a reconciliation of your net debt year over year and how it's determined. So it breaks down, starts with your annual surplus, which we just saw on your statement of operation, and goes through the changes in net debt and arrives back at that $33.3 million figure at the bottom of the statement. And that ties back to your statement of financial position, or what's commonly referred to as the balance sheet. And the last statement that I'll speak to is your statement of cash flows. Just because I'm an auditor geek and like to talk about this statement of cash flows, I'm going to go through it. So this is broken out into a couple of sections. You've got your operating activities, your capital activities, and financing activities. The big chunk is at the top, being those operating activities. And again, you can see the subtotal there. You generated $14.1 million in cash from the town's operating activities throughout the course of the year. Now, part of that is the gain on sale, the proceeds of selling the land. But still, needless to say, it's a significant increase year over year. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see you used far less cash than you did last year to acquire tangible capital assets. A lot of that is as a result of the Meridian Center being complete. And then in terms of your financing activities, you'll see that you used about $3.5 million in cash compared to generating 11.7 last year. But a lot of the reason why you generated that cash last year was because of the significant increase in bank indebtedness. So it's a good thing. So overall, year over year, your cash position, you can see, increased by about $6.5 million, which is, I keep saying this, but it's a good thing. I don't propose to go through the notes to the statements. They are very consistent year over year. There were no changes in accounting policies over the years, so you'll find them to be very consistent. It's just really just a couple of minor wording changes that were made and just updating the numbers year over year. So I think I'll pause. And the trust fund statements are after that. I don't think we need to go through the trust fund statements. So I think I will stop there and just simply take any questions or go through anything in more detail.
So no question, but just a comment from my perspective. I want to congratulate Teresa and Charlotte on great work over the past year on managing our finances. You know, things were pretty bleak at the beginning of the year, and obviously we're not out of it yet, but we made great strides thanks to your stewardship. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Wink. Our focus is, and it has been, is the replenishing of the cash. That's been our focus, and also just cost containment in our budgets, and just being very careful and with expenditures. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So any other comments from members of the committee? Any questions?
So this is where you can go in camera and Charlotte and I can leave. And you can ask Trevor any question that you want in camera with regards to the audit or anything that you want to ask of him.
Teresa, so the agenda copy that I have, the management summary of the financial statements is before that item?
Yeah, that's right, 7.2, sorry. So there's the motion there that, that the Pelham Audit and Finance Committee received the 2019 Deloitte report for information. And then we have management summary if there's any questions for that from.
Yeah, so could I have someone move that motion, please? Michael, Marianne, you can vote on stuff too. Okay, seconded by Marianne. All right, all in favor? Carried. Okay, so yeah, we'll move to in camera at this point.
Okay, I will stop streaming.
So that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public in order to consider the following: 239 2B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal employees, and 239 2J, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, or financial information that belongs to the municipality or local board and has monetary value or potential monetary value. So could I have a motion to move in camera, please? Bill, as a mover, seconder by Michael, all in favor? So carried. Thank you.